Think the market's your biggest challenge? Think again. In this episode, Meredith Kaminsky and I discuss how making some tweaks to your business model can not only skyrocket your success and make it easier, but improve your output. Today, I chat with Meredith Kaminsky. She's a mortgage broker with OneLink based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Been in the business since 2008. And a couple of things that we cover, why it's seldom the market that's actually the problem, but your business model, and it actually may be the thing that's holding you back. We talk about a couple changes that you can make to increase the number of referrals and how to unlock referral sources databases. And if you've got referral sources and they got databases, you're going to want access to those. I think you're going to love this conversation. Hey, I'm Scott Peckford, and this is the Out of Mortgage Brokering Podcast. And every week we talk to top mortgage brokers across the country, Canada and the US, to look for ideas that you can apply to your mortgage business. It's my belief that there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the answer. And our goal is with this podcast is to give you some of those answers. Before I jump in this episode, I want to give a shout out to OwnWell. This is an amazing new tool for our Canadian listeners at ownwell.ca. And it allows you to basically monitor your clients' buying power as well as their home equity on a monthly basis. It's got a massively high open rate for the consumer, and it gives you lots to talk about. It's based off of a tool called HomeBot in the US, and in the US, it works like crazy. It's been around for a while. And actually, I did an interview with the CEO of HomeBot when it first came out. And I was like, is this coming to Canada? And he said, I don't know. And they never did. And so thankfully, OwnWell has now done that. Go to ownwell.ca/Scott if you want to find out more. And let's have a listen to this conversation with Meredith. Hey, Meredith, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we chatted, and you said that you went back and you had to listen to a previous episode that we had done and talk about some process stuff. And so I'm excited to chat with you. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit of who you are and how you got in the mortgage biz.
Okay, so I am born and raised in Winnipeg. I grew up in Alberta, but moved back to Winnipeg, working actually for MCAP on the commercial lending side. So my background is commercial lending, and then I moved into the residential side and joined OneLink in 2008. So I've been on the residential side for many years.
Right. And so I was actually born in Manitoba as well. Oh. We were born and raised here. I was born but not raised. My dad moved me, and not long after I was born, but that's another story. Okay, so in the mortgage biz, and then you're very process driven. You've got a great business that you built here. You've got a team that helps you support, which we'll talk a bit about that. And so maybe share with me, like, what are some of the, and I want to ask about some process improvements or things that you've done, especially in the last year. The market's always shifting, and if we don't just leave our business alone. So what's some of the things that you've done to improve or in your process in the last 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so we like to, we're very trigger driven. So I think it's important to pick a system that you like and make sure you're actually using it.
Right.
So a lot of people sign up for systems and don't actually use them.
Or they sign up for multiple, and it's like having multiple gym memberships and going to none. It's like, didn't do you any good?
Yeah. What are you paying for, really? Right. So we have our system set up where there's multiple triggers based on the board. So we have different boards. So we have an active deal board. We have a pre-approval board. We have an anniversary board, a renewal board, a leads board. So as the client card moves across the board, it creates different triggers for us. So that's really key when you're doing a lot of volume to make sure things don't get missed. And it also triggers the different member of our team to do the task.
So they have a kind of a lane, if you think of it, that, okay, it's in this, it moves over. Whether it's a renewal, it moves into this next stage. That means that the trigger lets somebody in your team know that they've got to do X, Y, Z activities, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what's a trigger that you have recently updated on one, like maybe you can think of one of those boards, because, and if you guys are listening to this, we're talking about those Kanban boards that have, and lots of software has this, essentially it's like the contact record, and then you can drag it across. It's almost like, I always think of like a football field. You're on the 10-yard line, you're trying to get into the end zone at the end.
Yeah.
And you just, but in order to get to those milestones, you got to get certain tasks completed or certain activities done. But what's a trigger that you guys have updated because of something you found? Because that's how I find usually you find an issue and then you go back and you fix the trigger. So you think of one?
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say one of the ones that we've updated probably in the last year and a half is just when we do our Google review requests. So we do that right when the client is happiest, right when the deal has been approved and the file's been instructed before they start packing and moving. So I find that's helped with us getting more reviews.
Right.
Checking in to make sure the lawyer has instructions and the instructions are correct. That's a key one.
Yeah.
Following up with the client prior to funding and after funding. Those are some of the key triggers that we like to make sure we're checking in on.
And then, so tell me about what you have for a team that you and who does what on the team.
So it's me and my partner, Dave, and then we have an associate and an assistant.
Yeah.
So Dave and I we bring in the referrals, we do the underwriting and submission. Our associate does the processing of the application, collecting all the documents, giving us a full package to review.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back end, she helps with signing packages, funding conditions, just finishing the file off to get it ready to close. And then our assistant does all our social media, all the back end sort of admin stuff, all the anniversary and renewal letters.
And are these both full time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And do you guys work in an office or remotely?
3 of us work in the office.
Yeah.
Which I prefer, honestly. Like, I like to be around people. So for me, that works. But just having the 3 of us in the room who are working actively on the files, I find is really key because it's easy for communication.
Right.
Things move faster. You can solution things a lot quicker that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's worked for us. Our other assistant works from home, but she's very process driven. So
right. So she has certain tasks that get triggered, and then she's able to do that remotely without having to be in your office.
For sure. Yeah.
And then, so it sounds like you and Dave, you do the same role. So then if you go on vacation, when you go on vacation, can you actually be on vacation, or do you still have to work? What happens to pick up your files, or how do you guys figure that out?
So just, we try to take an actual holiday.
Yeah.
So, I do like to check my emails in the morning though, just to clean up anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do our best to cover for each other and let each other have a break because that's key. So.
Right. And we were chatting before that about 75% of your business is from past clients or client referrals, and a good chunk of your business right now is renewals. So what are you finding? Let's talk about renewals, because I think it's a very, there's a lot of talk about this gold rush of renewals, and some people seem to be having more success. But so what do you find is useful, or what's been working for you on the renewal conversations?
I find a lot of clients have anxiety around the renewal, especially with all the media and the talk about the higher rates. So we've done a good job of building those relationships and keeping in contact with our database. So I find people are reaching out really early. Like, we're doing calls right now for 2025, just to sort of be more realistic as to what that looks like.
So would you be doing, is it you or one of your associates that's making the calls and then booking you in, or what's happening there?
So we reach out 9 months out.
Right.
So, and that would be our assistant that does that. So by email and by mail.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have triggers at 6 months and at 3 months. And then just based on the type of file and who it is, because we're engaging those clients are engaging us back. So that's when we're booking calls. So.
Right. Okay. And then, you book calls, you're using this to get people into your calendar. You'll do a conversation with them. And so the anxiety, so if I'm I love to like role play a little bit. If I'm the client and I'm feeling anxious, what does that conversation look like? So if I've been your client for a while and I'm like, hey, I'm a little bit nervous and I heard rates are going to be, how do you sort of alleviate that anxiety for me?
I do the actual math. So like understanding where your balance is going to be.
So bring data. I heard one of my coaches say bring the data, not the drama, because the drama is like, let's just do the math. And then right?
Yeah. So if you actually do the math based on where the balance is, what the AM is, and where the payment is, it sort of relieves that anxiety, I find, for a lot of clients, just because, it is an increase, but it isn't as bad as they think it might be.
Right.
So, and then, just understanding that, is there a reason you might need to refinance? Is there debt?
What kind of questions would you ask me? So again, if I'm a client, I've got a mortgage, and let's say it's conventional, I got some equity. Just again, what kind of questions would you ask me to? Because what you're doing is uncovering if there's a possible another problem or something you can solve.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm
putting you on the spot here, but I know you've been doing this a long time. I know you can handle it. So if you can just and I'm not expecting you to be like, here's my full script, but just maybe for our listeners, I think it's helpful for them to think about these are the kind of questions you should be asking on a renewal conversation, not just, hey, what's the rate? And because you may be missing a bigger issue.
Yeah, for sure. I think you want to understand what their plan is for the house.
Right.
That's one a lot of people miss. If people are planning to move in the next 2 to 3 years.
So what will be an answer somebody will give you that will make your kind of, your radar go up? What do you think?
Just even the thought that they're planning to have a family and they need a bigger home, or they do want to actually move. A lot of people actually say that they do have plans to upgrade. So lots of the clients actually say, no, this is a forever house, or this is a 5 to 10 year house. But just figuring out those clients that may want to move soon,
right.
that changes what the advice is, right? So, and then just understanding, is there any reason they would want to increase the balance in the mortgage? So is there any stress with debt? Is there any renovations that might need to be done? Do they want to buy a family second home or cabin?
Right.
Do they want to invest in rental properties? Because that's...
Is there a common theme that you've noticed? I mean, without using names and sin numbers, I'm not going to, but if you think of any, what is a common thing that you've seen happen frequently if you think back over the last kind of 6 months or so?
I think we're seeing more debt than we used to see. Last year especially, we saw a lot of bad credit and a lot of debt last year. So I think the generation now sort of views debt differently than we used to. So people are okay carrying debt. I'll pay for it on my credit card and then I'll deal with it later sort of attitude, which catches up to people. And that's where you find
Sounds like the government. Sorry, but I'm not going to get political. And I'm not, all governments are like this. I'm not saying it's any one side. They're all the same.
Yeah, for sure. Just on like a lot of files actually turn into refinances just because there is a need there that makes sense.
Right. So either there's some debt consolidation, buying a cottage, buying a second vehicle, or whatever that was, some other situation. But without asking those uncovering questions, you're not actually serving your client properly.
Yeah, like if you go into the conversation thinking this is going to be a transfer, I'm just going to get it in the system, and you do the credit check and there's 70 or 80,000 of debt. Well, very quickly, that shouldn't be a transfer file. Right. That should be a conversation. So,
and if just out of curiosity, if I was a client, let's say if I'm having a family, I've got great kids and I do not want any more children. But if I was, say, a young person how would you guide me differently if I was, say, in a condo or a townhouse and I was planning to buy a house? Like what would that look like? Again, I'm curious about what you do there.
So just on looking to upgrade, is that?
Yeah. So let's say I'm in the place right now and I say, look, we're probably going to have kids in a couple of years. I don't think this is like what I'm looking at. Probably selling and buying in 2 years. If you can't plan all these things perfectly, but how would you advise me differently? I'm just curious what that would look like.
Yeah, so I would advise either on increasing savings or increasing repayment on the current mortgage to accumulate more equity towards the purchase.
Right.
And then, not that it's always in people's control, but increasing income if it's an option.
Right. So. And then what about things like, do you think about like porting the mortgage, moving it? Is that something you consider? Somebody's like the existing one, or would you look at something would you look at options for shorter, different terms? What would you do there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if they're planning to move in 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't recommend someone take a 5-year fixed.
Right.
Unless rates were really, really low, possibly then that might be a port in the future.
Right. But plan for something that you can actually port.
Exactly.
If that's the case, then a port and increase type of thing.
Yeah, I always caution people, though, it comes down to the math at the time, because a port is very specific, right? Yeah. So you have to, all the timelines have to
they are tricky. I've done them, but it's definitely, they don't happen very often. So
well, and the math needs to make sense, right? Yeah. So I'm very numbers driven. If the numbers make sense, that's the advice, right? So we do our best to give best advice, whether that's with us or with whoever the current institution is, based on where the math sits, right?
Right. And I know I didn't get you to pull your stats on this, but if you were to it can be an estimate. If what percentage of your business you think is renewal refi right now in the current market? And again, this will change over time.
Yeah. I would say purchases maybe 25 to 35%, and the rest would be refinances and transfers.
Right.
There's probably a few.
And would you say you have more refis or more transfers?
I would say more refis than transfers.
Yeah, but it's been my experience too, is that sometimes the straight up, if there's not anything new to do, the best thing is to do nothing but sign, right?
Yeah, you have to be adding value, right? There's no point to interject or put the client through the process if the current lender makes sense and they're competitive.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, what would you do if it was you? Most of us wouldn't want to go through the process of getting a loan there wasn't a new loan if it didn't make sense necessarily. But
yeah, for sure. There's lots of business out there, right?
And there is, that's true. So, okay, let's go back to I went down. So I always follow my curiosity. And you said, because I'm like, oh, you're having some success with this, I was going to ask you. Yeah. So talk to me more. You've got some of these, what did you call them? Process sheets. So explain to me what you mean by process sheets and how do they help?
So we just like to sort of make the process more clear for clients, right? Yeah. So it's, we do it every day. Clients don't. So we have different process sheets during different stages of the process. So like pre-approval as an example, we send out a pre-approval process sheet just so they understand what they're going to expect.
So is that basically like outlining, you're getting a pre-approval, here's what's the next steps are, like on to kind of, is that what it sort of looks like?
Yeah, this is what we do and this is the process. Same on the closing side. So we have process sheets for closing based on it being a refinance, whether it's a transfer, if there's a lawyer involved, if it's a purchase, just because those processes are slightly different, just so the client understands this is what you're going to need to do next.
Right.
We talk through it obviously with them as well, but those sheets just help to sort of alleviate or answer questions for people. So.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And then I also like this idea. You have these different boards. So these like Kanban boards for the different types of products or, solutions that you're doing. So you've got, like you said, the anniversary one. You've got what else? There's the renewal. There's the purchase. What was the other one?
Yeah. We have a leads board. So it starts in the leads board.
Right. Starts in the lead to figure out where it goes. And then it goes into one of these other ones that then it moves through that whole process. Is there any other tools or things that you found that you've started to use or made adjustments to in the last couple of years?
Just trying to think through what else. I always like to mention pre-lead because I think people forget about that. So if you get a referral and the realtor says, I told, Joe Smith to call you and you don't hear from Joe, you don't have Joe's contact. If you don't kind of put a trigger on to remind yourself to call those people and just say, hey, I never heard from Joe Smith. How
often do you actually, do you pick up that lead that that doing that second touch gets you the lead?
It actually helps a lot not drop off. So, so a lot of our pre-leads do actually turn into leads and we hear from those people. But the ones that we don't, it's definitely saved us some deals for sure. Right. So
it's such a simple step. So essentially what we're saying is that it's a realtor says, hey, Meredith, I gave your name to Tom and Sally, and you're like, well, they didn't email an introduction. So now you're waiting to hear from them, but you haven't. So then when would you follow up with that realtor? So if I'm the realtor and I said, I gave your name, Tom and Sally, they're going to call you. What would be your next touch point?
We usually give it a few weeks, realistically, because Tom and Sally may not be ready yet. Right? So
and then you'll cycle back to the realtor. Hey, I haven't heard from Tom and Sally. And then, oh, right, shoot, yes, I was just talking the other day or whatever. And then you go from there.
Yeah, and then you kind of get the backstory and, Tom and Sally just weren't ready. They're going to reach out to you.
You're on vacation. Who knows? Something's going on.
Whatever the story is there.
Okay. And then is there what are the things you think you do that helps make your business run better?
We try to follow the same system and process for every client. So everyone is treated the same. Everyone goes through the same process. I think that's important. It doesn't matter the size of the transaction. So that, just thinking back to the $25 million blueprint that we did back in, I guess, 2017.
Yeah.
Setting up that customer journey and understanding what that client's going to go through is key. So that's important to us. Just trying to think of something else that we haven't touched on. Part of our process is sending thank you cards. So we thank every referral by mail. So we have pre-printed cards. We make donations to Tree Canada for referrals. And then we send how many,
do you guys track how many trees you planted?
On an annual basis. Yeah.
Okay. You don't know what that is, but that's kind of a cool thing because, I like that. So you do the you said you do the thank you, you plant the tree. What was the last thing you're going to say? I cut you off.
No worries. Yeah. So we do thank you cards for clients as well. So that card says something different, and we do annual charitable donations as well on deals. So, and that charity changes every year, but it's just something different. We used to do Starbucks cards for thank yous for referrals, but at the end of the day, we sort of felt like we wanted to give back, and it seems like
and people like most, it's and if it's authentic to you and your brand, it's better to do what's authentic than something that someone else does. I want to ask about, you talked about breaking the process, because I'm sure I've seen this happen. Maybe you can talk to this. Is that sometimes when it's a family or friend, there's a temptation to kind of bypass your normal process. Have you ever done that? And if so, are you just like super disciplined and you never break your process?
Yeah, not specifically with family, but every once in a while, people put pressure on you to maybe not give you that last piece of documentation, whatever that is. I just find that there's lots of nuances. We're asking for income exceptions on lots of files right now, and it's better to figure it out ahead of time. So, although I'm sure there's times in the past that we've broken from that process, it's better to just...
It's not that often. See, I would do it for me. My mistake would be like, oh, it's my friend. But they'd end up getting a worse experience than a stranger. And then they'd be like, I thought you were good at your job, man. And so I found that you just have to stick to it no matter what. Don't let them.
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't want to find out that, maybe your friend Joe has CRA debt owing, but he never gave you a notice of assessment, and you found that out at the 9th hour.
And now you look like and now you're stressing out because you said everything looked fine, but now it's not, and all that whole catastrophe that happens.
Yeah, it's just better to sort of uncover what that hidden item might be ahead of time.
Right.
So,
okay. So let's chat about lead stuff. So what have you done in the last sort of 6 to 12 months that you found help get? I mean, most of your business is past client. So obviously your database marketing, but is there anything you've done that you're like, hey, this actually worked pretty well?
Although we don't do it as much as we should, just picking up the phone, that actually makes a big difference. So,
and who are you phoning?
Past clients, referral sources. We have triggers for anniversary phone calls in our database, or renewal phone calls. Honestly, I just find if you just start picking up the phone, if you ever have a bit of a slow period, it just makes the phone ring more.
Right. So, you just there's more opportunities that come just from
back to basics.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. And then, so what do you do on the database you said you send out you do an anniversary. What are you doing to keep these clients? Obviously you create a great experience, but there must be some communications on the back end. What are you doing with that?
So we have a plan set up based on the term of the mortgage.
Yeah.
So there's different triggers at different points that go out. We do a newsletter every couple months. We do a contest actually every couple months.
Yeah.
Just to engage people.
Like, so would that be like, we'll give me an example of something that you guys have done that people that they responded with?
So the one we're doing right now is on Halloween. So like your favorite Halloween costume, or how did you pick your costume? Like just, tell us about what you like about Halloween. And we're getting random pictures from clients of funny costumes. And so it's making people engage for different reasons, which is nice, right? It's fun to reconnect with people in a different
And then
ways.
what do you do for a prize? How do you figure what you do there?
So what's been popular is picking a local venue.
Yeah.
So we'll say $100 to the venue of your choice, local.
Right.
And sometimes we do different themes. Maybe it's a garden theme, just depends on the time of year. Halloween, we're doing candy. So, a bunch of candy for Halloween to give out, that kind of thing. So,
well, and if you're engaging with your clients with something, like you said, that's already on their minds, it's way easier to get their attention than, hey, here's my newsletter about, they don't, like, people only think about their mortgage every multiple years that go by. They don't think about it on every week, every month kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah, we think about it far more often than anyone
because it's what we do, but it makes sense. And then, so I like the idea of using themes to engage with your past clients. So anything else? You see the newsletter. What else?
Just trying to think of how else. Dave and I are both in business groups. So just, rounding out where we find business and where we can help people. So our goal isn't to sell people, it's to serve people. So we want to find, find out just by listening to what they're saying, what they need, and then sourcing the best solution for them. So actually being in different groups with different.
So what kind of, is it like BNI groups, or what kind of groups are they?
Yeah, we're both in BNI network.
So different ones though.
Separate ones, yeah.
Right. Okay. Those have been. I've heard those can be good. So what do you think? What kind of how much business would you say you think you get a year from being in a BNI? Because some people hate on them and other people love them, but it's probably more about how the group matters, but also how you show up matters.
For sure, 100%. I think it's mindset too. Yeah. So, we have a really good core group. So our group has a lot of great energy. I've helped people in the group that themselves, so it's easy for people to refer me as well. So I would guess.
How long have you been in there?
About 4 years, almost 5 years. So, yeah.
It is a great way to meet a bunch of other business owners that have non-competing businesses with you.
For sure. Yeah. And clients are looking for those services as well, right? So it's good to have, that referral for that client that may need whatever the service is, right? So.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think I should have asked you that our listeners might find helpful?
Not that I can think of. I think, honestly, it's kind of boring. Like, what we do is just follow the same process, make sure we hit the right trigger points, make sure we're following up, make sure we're keeping in touch, but just make sure you're actually doing it.
Right.
It's key to, where all of our businesses come from. We do our best to service the client the best way we can. We answer the phone, right? That's key. You get the deal if you answer the phone. You don't answer the phone, they call the next person, right? So, so I think that's a lot of what we do. And just, showing up and finding the right solution and always giving best advice, whether that's with us or someone else.
I've said, that the best movie for mortgage brokers is Groundhog Day, because that's what it is. The best mortgage brokers, it's actually not
like, it's not every day. It's like the same every day. You do the same thing. And the more consistent you are, the better you get at it. Just like in Groundhog Day, he actually got better at that same day. By the end of the movie, he was catching the kid falling out of the tree. And so, like, it's the same with us as mortgage brokers, that if you do it the same thing repeatedly, you get outsized results.
Absolutely.
So I think that's totally great. So where can people find you online?
So our website is mortgagesdoneright.ca. So that's where they can find us, and we're all over social media.
Yeah, and we'll have links in the show notes. And so if anybody wants to find you or connect with you. So thank you so much for coming to chat with me again. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being part of the road show and getting to do a live podcast, which I have not done very many of. So thank you so much.
Yeah, this is awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and it's great to see you again.
Hey, thanks again for listening. Hopefully you got some ideas, some nuggets from my conversation with Meredith. The big thing I find is that often people that are very good at this business, a lot of things that they do are just second nature. Meredith is no exception to this, because she's like, I don't really do anything special, Scott. But as you dig into it more, you're like, well, you're doing this. A lot of times what someone does consistently, they no longer think that it's special, but actually that consistency is the key that makes the whole thing work. So if you're listening to this, give me a chance. If you, two things. One, go follow me on social media. I've been working building a social account, sharing tips and tricks and tactics helping your mortgage business. Just go over and find me on there. You can click on this podcast episode to find that. Also, we have an email that we put out every week. We think it's the most useful newsletter for mortgage brokers. We share with you 3 things to check out from the last week, 2 content ideas to copy, and then 1 idea from me. And it's very succinct, and there's tons of value in it. Go check that out. You can find that on my social profile, as well as if you click on this podcast episode. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.